quite the milestone.
All right. Good evening and good morning, Unicorn fam. Welcome to the Crypto Unicorns Weekly Town Hall number 26. Crypto Unicorn CEO and co founder. Woody's going to be a bit quiet for today. We're setting up a couple of exciting things in the background. This is our second Town Hall event for December. So next week is going to be our final Town Hall event for the year. We're going to be taking a quick little break for the holidays, and we will be right back in January, ready for another town hall. So we've got Aron here, ready to spill the tea and spread the hype at Aron's updates. Good morning, Aron. How you doing?
I am fantastic. Thank you as always, Sparkly. All right, lots of stuff to cover. I'm going to kind of run through it as quick as I can, and we'll get to questions. Let's start with the winter update. V1.7. That is launching next week. You can expect a host of UX and UI improvements, many I've mentioned before, but I'll go through the ones that are top of mind. There'll be a quick refill energy button within the inventory menu, so you do not have to go to the Unicorn profile to refill energy. So that's great. We're persisting sort and filters. So if you're sorting in particular for, let's say, babies, because you're doing a series of baby planting actions, you're going to see that filter persist across the menus. Again, reducing the number of clicks. Long time coming has been the web frame update. So there will be live price feeds, direct links to Haku and OpenSea for purchases, direct link to the game guide. I believe it also includes an official maintenance window, which we've needed for some time. So that's going to be pretty exciting. You can expect the web frame to also be something that we more flexibly, not more flexibly, that's not the right word, but we more frequently update. To include things like links out to maybe the event blog post that's ongoing and things of that nature. So really trying to make use of that space such that every single time people are coming to the game, you're like one click away from the things that you need. Let's see. We'll also be auto-assigning berries on Gathering. That should have happened a long time ago. I'm glad to finally see that occurring. And then there'll be a host of other minor fixes on the UX and UI front. There's going to be a series of minor asset updates. Might see some snow coming. Alongside the snow is going to be a series of new winter-specific quests. So look out for a host of new quests on that front. And what's this sparkly, dare I say, mythic utility?
What?
You will see, I should say Kaiser will certainly see this first, and then it will get spread out to the community when the update goes live. But there'll be things like mythic-only reward bundles for farming, adding mythic unicorn requirements for certain new crafting recipes, as well as adding a mythic reward bundle to gathering. So that should all be very exciting. I think for many, many months we've been speaking to mythic utility with respect to the farm sim, and I'm excited to finally see a little bit getting layered in, especially for those who've really been working hard and grinding out the mythic breeding loop. In addition to the mythic utility, we'll also be adding land requirement for certain crafting recipes. So you actually have to have a type or class of land to craft some new crafting recipes. Obviously, those with mythic lands, great. You're solid as far as the workshops there. And you're going to see a data change that will allow us to actually do some breeding reward bundles, which I think will be kind of fun. Add a little bit of extra spice to your breeding operations, especially as we look to continue to scale supply into the new year. Cool. That is the winter update, which is set to go live next week. Next, let's talk about the Great Corn Drop. The claim site work is complete and in QA. We have completed the badge airdrop work. The first campaigns are structured. As I've mentioned before, there's kind of three separate initial types of campaigns. One type of campaign is the direct-to-wallet campaigns, where we're analyzing wallets based on their behavior and trying to target loyal players that we think are going to be loyal, engaged, and obviously valuable community members. The second type of campaign is the evangelist campaigns. We're going to be opening those up, I really hope sometime next week, where members of the Founders channel and the Starcorns channel can actually effectively gift starter bundles to influencers, to friends, etc. And then we'll be doing a series of what I call Discord activation campaigns. Each one of these campaigns is going to be separately analyzed, so we'll always know like what whether it was a direct wallet campaign, an evangelist campaign, a Discord activation campaign. We can look at what campaigns are yielding us the best players, the best most loyal, most retained, most engaged players. And again, all of these things are experiments, just like we would do in Web 2 marketing. But the goal is to, as we gather more and more data, we'll better understand what's giving us effectively the best bang for our buck, right? Because we're taking marketing dollars, we're buying corns and land from existing players to create these bundles, right? We're then airdropping badges that allow people to come and claim these bundles. We're airdropping them through the three mechanisms I mentioned: direct to wallet, evangelist program, and Discord activation program. And it's really important to understand that the Great Corn Drop, I plan to be this ongoing thing with a number of campaigns against it, right? Likely through at least the end of Q2 2023. If it's working, we'll likely do it even further because we're doing PR around this. You're going to see our evangelists on crypto Twitter talking about it. And the whole goal is to get people excited just generally about the Great Corn Drop. And obviously the hope is then they get targeted via one of the campaigns in the future, right? So you activate awareness, and then over time, people will receive these opportunities, these badges, right, to come claim a bundle and start playing the game. Love to discuss more about that if people have questions. It's very important to understand I'm trying to replicate performance user acquisition from Web 2 in a Web 3 native fashion. And I do believe the first project in the space to succeed here is going to be have a significant advantage over other projects in the space that either haven't shipped or are just barely getting out the door with alpha and betas and really aren't thinking yet about like how do we meaningfully grow in the space, and especially in this bear market. So that is the Great Corn Drop. Moving on, we have 2 planned or scheduled Delphi podcasts. Actually asked Pierce to split it into 2. I wanted one very specifically kind of looking at like 2023, a year in review. I think consistently I fail to explain some of the many successes that we have delivered on over the course of this year. And it's a little easy if you're just looking at token prices to, I think not understand some of the really special things that we've built. So we're going to be kind of diving into the nitty gritty of the economy, how that foundation has been built out over the course of the year, how we've live operated, what we've learned thus far. We'll be talking about user acquisition, and so really trying to kind of reinforce everything that we've delivered, really speak very clearly to the fact that we've shipped the most complex economy in this space to date, and begin to talk about the 2023 roadmap. That will be happening, I believe, next week. And should go live before the end of the year. Then in January, we'll be doing a jousting live demo, kind of effectively watching a tournament play out, commenting on that stuff, discussing jousting generally, and how each of the battle loops over time is going to kind of interoperate with the existing farming economy. So I'm pretty excited about that. The last Delphi podcast, went live right before the Dark Forest Act 1 kicked off. That was a big inflection point for us, and I want to leverage it as a platform to speak to everything that we've done this year, and then look to the future in 2023 to begin building, excitement around everything that's going to be occurring. Next, there is a jousting blog post incoming. I believe it was approved for publication, and so it's on the CM team to get that delivered in the next few days. be on the lookout. Goes into the nitty-gritty details as well as giving a pretty significant preview of the UI. I'm very excited to share details on that front. Obviously, you've seen the gameplay trailer. Now you get to see, we're taking the wraps off of some of the underlying design and mechanics. And so we're very, very excited for the community to see this. This is part of an overall effort to preview things with the community in advance of releases. And so I'm super proud of the team for getting this put together as quickly as they did. Next, governance. Several things happening. The bug bounty and mod programs are in front of the console as I speak, and that vote is ongoing. We have the quadratic voting intro blog post that has gone live. That should be followed with a draft proposal, which we'll be trying to get in front of the council, I believe, this month. We also have Governance Council Season 2, which is about to open up for nominations. And will certainly before the end of the month. So anyone interested in rerunning for the council or new people looking to secure a seat on the council, I would start preparing your campaign speeches. Next, I'm halfway through, Sparkly. Stay with me. Staking V2, the contract is being audited, the website is being designed, and the goal is to launch before the end of January on that front. There'll be a period of time in which you're going to need to, particularly multi-accounters are going to need to delegate badges to their primary staking account. And so be on the lookout for blog post explaining that mechanism and how to, get out ahead of it, because you effectively need to do that prior to the launch of the new contract itself. And so we'll be putting out a blog post that details all of that stuff. But again, there'll be kind of like an event that we run prior to that. So anyone, looking to stake badges across accounts, keep in mind you can only utilize one badge anyway, so it doesn't really matter how many accounts on that front. But if you have different badges on different accounts, that's where it would be helpful on that front, as well as just aggregating rewards towards your primary staking account, which makes sense. What's up with these cornucopias? Beyond, awarding points for the fall leaderboard, which I know everybody knows and understands, they will be utilized as inputs to a series of limited time quests with rewards that include Unim, RBW, as well as high tier items. It's also possible you might be able to put them together into very specific quests that earn you point bonuses on that leaderboard. So that stuff is planned and ongoing. We're never going to have event items just be for leaderboards. So never make the assumption that it is just for leaderboard points. The plan will always be to find ways to sync those items over time via exclusive quests and maybe even potentially things like exclusive crafting recipes, etc. Right? So that's always kind of going to be the plan with event-specific items or commodities that are being produced. Next, a Breeding for Dummies blog post. You've asked for it many, many times. Jeff, our design director, is delivering what I feel is kind of the definitive guide for breeding, especially now with things like Haku that offer, I think, a really compelling they surface the data that's relevant to breeders, right? And so Jeff's blog post, I think, is going to go a long way to breaking down what is inherently a very complex process. It's supposed to be complex. Breeding will be a specialty, and the players that really choose to get into it need to have a skill curve. And so breeding has a skill curve, in my opinion. But this this blog post will, I think, help anyone looking to get into breeding. It'll be a phenomenal kind of starting point. This kind of goes into the second to last update, which is I've really been considering a white paper v3. I think we just generally need to reformat it. Seeing some content creators and stuff continue to reference it, it makes sense that the white paper is still a starting point for many people. Obviously, it outlines, I think, the economic strategy and just the overall vision for what we want to build pretty well. But I think when you compare it to other white papers in the space, particularly for other games that are live launched, I want to orient it towards, here's how you play, here's the links to the game guides, right? And make it way more directly referencing things like our living roadmap, etc. So that's something that's kind of on my plate. Definitely don't expect that this year, but I am looking to get that delivered in the new year. And then the last thing, and then I'll finally be done, is feature previewing. So, we've heard the community on this front. It's something that, prior to, proposals that have been put forward by various members of the community, like it's something we've actively talked about, previewing features early in an effort to gauge community sentiment as well as help set expectations, where sharing very little to no information allows expectations to run wild, things get mismatched, and ultimately there's there can be a problem when we ship features. And so in an effort to kind of gauge community sentiment prior to work kickoff, avoid these mismatches in expectations, you can expect, if you're in the Founders and Starcorns channel, to expect to see an updated farm user experience as well as post on tribes. So tribes being kind of the next major tentpole feature after jousting. Delegation is still on the roadmap after jousting, but it's a smaller feature by several orders of magnitude relative to tribes. Tribes is a very, very important feature, and I think it's a really great opportunity to preview this early, well before engineering work has started, such that we can, build buy-in from the community around what will, I think, be this pivotal feature in transitioning us from an infinite progression farm sim to much more of a social 4X strategy kind of light game, which I'm very, very excited about. And then again, kind of smaller but still important is the updated farm user experience. We want to preview that. I think it's obviously, it's been enormous amounts of community feedback that we've ingested and look to, again, you're going to see a series of mock-ups. We're going to ask for feedback and, effectively get sign-off before engineering work begins at all on that front. Like I'd said before, the farm UX was definitely something that we have known for a long time needed a ground-up rebuild, especially with everything we've added since launch. We chose to first focus on the jousting UI and UX to get out ahead of that for the engineering team. You will see that UI in the jousting blog post. I think you're going to be very happy with it. I think you're going to see we've taken, yes, we kept a lot of the same patterns, but we've definitely done a nice reboot of the UI, with a fresh kind of UX team that really thought through a lot of stuff and wasn't necessarily rushing to get things out. So now that that work is complete, the farm user experience is next on the list and something that's very important to us and something that, again, we want to preview with the community and get feedback on. And so, that's the last thing I'll kind of say is just generally as we kind of round out 2022 and begin to look towards 2023, there's a bunch of stuff in the pipeline that I think, is going to really continue to increase our ability to listen to community feedback and get that feedback integrated into our ongoing roadmap so that we can be preventative rather than reactive in terms of managing expectations and getting features out that everybody, like it launches, everybody feels good about it, everybody's excited about it. So this has been a huge part of a lot of our internal discussions. We're even remapping a lot of how our production process works to include these community sentiment and gut checks. All right, that's it, Sparkly.
My brain just exploded 42 different ways the last 20 minutes. And just when you feel like it could not get any better, Aron goes a step further and says, next. I bet you guys absolutely love that. Thank you so much, Aron. And I bet y'all have questions like, first, how did I become a founder? You can't, because we already have the founders that we need. How do I become a Starcorn? That's something you can ask the founders. All right, let's get this town hall started. We have a 3 questions per person rule. If a question has been answered previously, you'll have to ask something else. Any questions related specifically to your account or a Zendesk issue, please reach out to us on the Mod Support channel so the CM team can take care of it for you. we will not be entertaining any ticket-related questions here because we can't address your situation directly because of privacy concerns and because you want to make the most out of every town hall by asking the kinds of questions that only Aaron can answer, specifically all of the updates that he gave. I have so many questions. I bet y'all have so many questions. To raise a question in voice, please press the request to speak button. The button looks like a raised hand, and you can queue up at any time. Once we accept your request, you'll see a green bar at the top of your Discord. Click accept to begin speaking. We also have written questions. It's on the Town Hall Bulletin Forum channel on the Town Hall 26 thread. Take note that we prioritize spoken questions over written ones. You can also head on stage and ask any question that you may find over there. First up, though, we have anonymous questions. We accept a maximum of 5 anonymous questions for Town Hall, so if I don't read out yours, that means that you got cut off. And you're always free to ask your question on the thread or to hop on the stage and to ask your questions there. Okay, let's check the anonymous questions. I feel like all of these are already answered with the announcement that you gave. So, okay, we have the first one. When will be the target timeline for jousting? When will be the official release of mechanics information for jousting? And lastly, regarding the Great Corn Drop, if the Great Corn Drop will commence, how will you ensure that players will not flood open sea by dumping the assets, the NFTs?
Yep. Jousting timeline, engineering team's going to kill me, so I'm not going to give you more details on that. I can tell you it's sooner than most of the community expects, and you can expect the jousting blog post likely tomorrow or early next week. Again, product signed off on it, looks great. It's up to the CM team on when they want to put that out with our content cadence. So, blog post imminent, jousting sooner than most people expect. I'm very, very happy with the progress on that front, and we are actively, testing major components of it. So it's in a really good state. The OpenSea stuff, like, listen, everyone has to understand I have zero control over people's ability to dump those assets. Keep in mind, I bought them from y'all, right? So again, marketing dollars are going into our economy versus going to Facebook to try and get somebody to enter our economy. That's a very, very, very important thing to understand. You have to also understand that I come from a world where 70 to 80% of the installs I bought today will not be there tomorrow. That is just the reality of it. 70, 80% of people delete an app almost immediately after installing it, or they don't return and they delete it 7 days later, right? But the fact is day 0 is the install date, day 1, the next day, 70, 80% of people are gone, right? So I'm looking at player acquisition very similarly. If I spend and I do 800 bundles or something, right? And 400 of those bundles engage with the game, and 400 of those, let's say 200 of them just keep the assets but don't do anything with them, and 200 do go back and dump, fine, right? Like, I bought all the bundles in the first place. We have to expect that there's a certain amount of people who will flip these things. The beauty of it is I'm going to know the performance of every single campaign. So, for example, if the evangelist program ultimately ends, 80% of people flip, we'll never do it again, right? So the risk, it's not like I'm spending $1 million tomorrow to just see, right? These are all tests. And so anyway, we're going to shut off the campaigns that aren't successful, retune the ones that are, and ideally we find one where it's like, hey, actually Discord activation, because people are already in Discord, already partly in the funnel, is doing the best. Well, great, we're going to triple down on that one, right? So you have to understand they're all different experiments. Our risk exposure is relatively low. But I'm not over here worried about people dumping, because at the end of the day, that's the end result. I already bought the asset from y'all. Dumping it just gets us back to where we were in the first place, right? And again, campaigns in which a high amount of players are just flipping those assets will shut those campaigns down. I also have the ability to turn off the badges and their ability to claim if we're just seeing, oh, wow, this community we targeted, or, oh, this specific campaign to this certain type of player is just not working at all. So anyway, that's what I'd say to that.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. All right, our next anonymous question. Hi, I know that it's possible to visualize the work of the boosters. We, the players, would like to be able to see how the genes improve and how many percent are missing for improvement. It could be like a miracle wheel while waiting for the evolution process, and it would allow most people to reach for the high level boosters. After all, crafting boosters is the lifeblood of the game's internal economy. Please make a visualization for the people who want it. Is this going to be
Yeah, no,
included in Jeff's like
well, they're asking for a user experience and user interface update, right? And
yeah,
I
yeah.
agree with it. From the beginning, we did have designs, user interface designs that would show gene data within the game itself. Um, Farming UX is, like I said, the next thing, and then nursery to me is the next user experience that we will look to improve. And the crux of that improvement will be the display of those additional details. So yes, that is something that you can expect in the new year after the farming user experience update. We're kind of trying to keep a swim lane for our engineers that's very specific to user experience issues. And again, farm UX and nursery UX, right, is to me the right sequence to go and do that stuff.
All right. Okay. The third anonymous question that we have, is there any plan on reworking the Discord? There's just a huge bunch of channels, threads, etc. that it's hard to find stuff from time to time, and as we've onboarded newcomers, it has become clear that it's hard for them to find an idea to where to start. Well, I mean, as part of the CM team, yes, we are going to be reworking the Discord. We have been like gradually making things a bit more compact and a bit more intuitive for players to find, but for the entire like overhaul, this is something that we want to do little by little because we don't want to confuse the players. But we are doing our best, and if you have any suggestions, feel free to tag me and tell me how you feel about it. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with everything that you just said, Sparkly, and I think we're moving in the right direction with the changes that we've made to the Discord. The web frame having a direct link to the game guide and those things are a start. We have a kind of first time user experience, kind of like three menus that our new UI UX person put together that I'm really happy with, that I think is going to be a great way for someone who's just getting into the game to kind of understand, well, okay, here are the core loops and here's what to go and do. And for me, the V3 of the white paper, like I'm not super happy with the game guide in Notion, and everything just still isn't, I think, in a spot where it's just like, here's how you go about getting things done. And I think that Sunflower Land does a better job with respect to their white paper and making it just clear, like, here's how I on ramp and here's what I should care about the first few weeks. Because the reality is, most of the people who've been playing care about something very, very different than what a new player would. And so, anyway, the message to the community is that there are a lot of ongoing discussions internally at Laguna on how we improve that. I would also keep in mind that like jousting represents a completely new gameplay loop that likely has more players interested up front than farm sim just generally, and jousting will be a much easier thing for players to kind of grok, and it's certainly a much easier on ramp. You only need one joust corn to play, you don't need any land. You can actually ignore land gameplay if you really want to. Of course, you'd be buying your potions and things from players who are playing the land gameplay and stuff, right? So that's kind of how it will economically balance out there. So one of the reasons that we haven't just been like all out, oh my God, we have to fix that on ramp, is like, especially if you're in Discord and willing to ask questions, it's very clear that, players will retain, and they get the help that they need with our kind of wonderful community members, our mods, our CM team, etc. So, and then with jousting on the horizon, it's like, okay, let's get jousting out. That represents a much easier game loop to on ramp into. Let's see how that, adjusts numbers. And then my hope is that a lot of players start to play jousting and go, I'm buying all these potions. Like, maybe I'll get some land and I'll start crafting them. And once we start to see that as well, again, hopefully we've had time to push some of those user experience improvements I just mentioned to smooth out the player on-ramp there.
All right, thank you so much, Aaron. Okay, we have another question. Do we have any concrete short and midterm plans for RBW and UNIM?
That person needs to ask a way more specific question. So I don't have an answer given the complete lack of specificity.
Okay, yeah, it is
So they can
very
try again.
broad.
Ask me something specific, please.
Yes, yes, the Magic 8
Plans with
Ball
Unum and
says try
RBW.
again.
I can tell you to keep Unum balanced and, staking V2 for RBW. And, generally the experiment right now is we've let RBW finally be a source within the game economy itself. And we're going to see how many of you stake or how many of you dump it to buy other assets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So, like, it's an ongoing thing, but I don't have any specific plans beyond what we already do and continue to do, like QE, quantitative easing of the Unum effort. We do plan to increase the liquidity around Unum with new DAO growth. I think it would be silly to add a ton of liquidity now. We obviously have we've acquired an enormous amount of Unum over the last few weeks, etc. Let's move on from that one, Sparkly.
All right, gotcha. Okay, now we have our first speaker of the day. We have Jackie Yates. Please come on over to the stage. Hey, Jackie.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Perfect. Kind of connecting to Aaron's just I don't know, comment on jousting or the corn drop. I'm just going to read out what I wrote in the Ask the Devs channel. Hi team, regarding the growth strategy, could it be worth considering to not try to force growth while only land gameplay is available? How about we push out the word about jousting and put all the focus on it for the growth phase? Building anticipation for jousting might benefit the DAO growth more than trying to get people into land gameplay. Land gameplay has proven to be difficult to onboard new players into. Jousting will probably be a more simple game loop and also much more accessible by just needing one unicorn. Demand for land gameplay will come naturally by funneling players into the CU metaverse with jousting. Basically, the question here for the corn drop, wouldn't it make sense to wait with the corn drop until jousting is out, since, in my personal opinion, having two corns and maybe one land is pretty much pointless to start with in the current land gameplay design?
I guess my argument, Jackie, would just be it's more valuable to have the data now on how well this works in the first place. What is the conversion rate on badge claims? What is the tendency of recipients to flip the assets? What is the challenge of onboarding and retaining? There is a simultaneous program that everyone that claims bundles will get entered into, or if they lock their assets in and begin to play and engage, there are other potential rewards that they could earn, right? So there are ways where you can we're helping players progress early if they retain and if they, are what I would consider to be like good members of the community. So the Great Corn Drop, as I mentioned, goes through at least Q2 of next year. The jousting release is a huge part of the Great Corn Drop. I agree with you that it's likely we can acquire more DAO via the Great Corn Drop, but you also have to look at marketing from the perspective of lifetime value. People who get into land gameplay, given its economic depth, right, are going to be very high LTV wallets. We've already seen that to date, right? So I want to look at and attempt to acquire across all of our loops. I don't disagree with the point that you've made, which is jousting is likely far easier and we might get more DAO in. I think the counter argument is likely those wallets have a lower ARPDAO, right? Yes, they're buying assets and commodities from the farmers within the game experience, right? But somebody that just holds a couple of jousting corns and doesn't get into breeding and stuff is not adding enough to the economy relative to a farm player. So I want the data now. We're not talking about risking millions and millions of dollars and trying to acquire players via land gameplay and things of that nature. So I want the data now. I don't want to wait on on jousting, and it will help us inform and I think better target players when we're ramping up into the jousting release itself.
Okay, thanks for your answer.
Yeah, it's a great
My
question. Appreciate it.
my second question is regarding the cornucopias. You just hinted the utility which is upcoming. The question that I have is how many cornucopias are too many?
You can never have enough cornucopias.
Okay, Sprockly said exactly the same. Okay, I really hope so because I was about to hit 100, so I hope I'm not wasting time and effort
Oh
here.
Lord, I thought you had way more than that. No, I mean, it is. I have given the design team strong feedback that they need to stop releasing things without showing the entirety of the roadmap for them. That is an unacceptable thing. It is something the design team is aware of. Again, we are in many ways still in certain areas catching up to where we want to be in terms of how early we get messaging and stuff out to the community. The fall leaderboard is again another case where we're behind, right? So in the future, you can expect to understand what things are for when events launch, and there not being a question around it, right? Because we are in a situation, as I mentioned before, where you might have certain expectations, right? And I just said, hey, cornucopias, you can't have too many. The great thing is we see it in the data, we can balance, we plan to balance it via those quests where you have to have cornucopias, right, to complete them. So I feel pretty good about our ability to deliver on something meaningful for players who are grinding out the cornucopias.
Cool. Follow up to that because you said you thought I have way more than 100. Do you know what the most produced cornucopias per account are?
I do, but I'm going to have to look for that. I just saw it somewhere.
Because I thought 100 is a lot based on how often I'm running those quests, but apparently they're not. Okay.
I'm asking a design team member. I might have to get back to you after you step down, but we'll get that answer.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, that's it.
Cool. Thank you, Jackie.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Next up, we have SW Martin 19. Please come on over to the stage. Hi, Sam. Good morning.
Hey guys, how's it going?
We're doing great.
Good. Aaron, I was just curious, in terms of third-party games, which one are you most excited about right now?
It's a tough call between Unicorn Party and Rainbow Rumble. I kind of like the quick hit action of the kind of PvP titles, right? Like Bumper Mob. So that one I think is just kind of fun to pick up and play. Easy to pick up, right? And then difficult to master. Rainbow Rumble is interesting because it's a very hard game, right? I mean, the idea of like 60 unicorns starting and you're trying to knock off a bunch over the course of that loop. For anyone who's played Fall Guys, like Fall Guys is a really inherently pretty damn difficult game, right? And so I think trying to balance that out into an experience that still rewards skill is really what that team is working on a ton now. So yeah, it's a little bit of a toss up between Unicorn Party and Rainbow Rumble for me right now.
Oh yeah, I'm excited for those to come out. Also, I was curious, like the only place that I run into issues in the game today is like breeding, and I know you've like kind of like kept close to the Web3 ethos and keeping that on chain. Have you, despite all the work you've put into like optimizing the process, thought at all about taking that process off chain?
No, it would remove the Web3, a very important Web3 component for us. I think I mean, you should be transparent about the breeding issues that you experience. I mean, we've had something like maybe 10, issues in the last 15 days come in via tickets, right? And if you imagine where that was 3 or 4 months ago, I mean, we have cut out 99.9% of those issues and challenges. So if you have some specific edge case you're running into, it'd be very helpful for the team to understand that. I would say that you really want. Have you seen Polygon's announcement? Came out, I think, yesterday or the day before around their parallel execution of transactions?
I did, yes. I was looking forward to that. I just didn't know what the timeline was there for them.
Yeah, my understanding is it's probably a Q1 thing from talking to their head of product. That's me giving them some buffer. He had said it would be earlier than that, but you never know. That's very, very cool because that will speed up the network 1.6x, right? So just from a timing perspective, the number of confirmations needed, the time is just going to be less. So that's really, really, really awesome. So between that and we've been told by the Polygon team that they have a update that will reduce the depth of reorgs on the network, which is a challenge for developers trying to do things like we are on chain. And I was told directly that that would at least allow us to reduce the number of confirmations from 60 to 30. So if you combine both of those things, right, the throughput increase of the overall network by 1.6x coupled with the reduction in the depth of reorgs on the network, right, you're going to see a very significant like speed improvement, right, over 2x for us. And I think that coupled with everything the team has done to resolve edge cases or do retries and things of that nature gets us to the point where it's a moot issue, and we have what we wanted from the beginning, which is a system that's that's Web3 native and uses things like Chainlink for RNG and prints to the permaweb, so that we could go away tomorrow and the unicorns and land and everything lives forever, right? So it took us a long time to get here. I know it hurt us early on, but I really do think that between everything we've done, coupled with the improvements from the Polygon core dev team, we're going to be in a really, really good spot in 2023.
No, that makes complete sense, and I get wanting to keep all that on chain. I was just kind of curious where your head was at there. And then for my last question, it's kind of like two-pronged, but I was kind of looking at the treasury on Ethereum, and I noticed like 82% in USDC, so like obviously trying to maintain like that runway. But have you thought about getting a little bit more aggressive with the staked ETH LP position? And then secondly, this is like an off-the-wall idea, but like you're bringing in a ton of interest on that. Would you ever consider redirecting the interest that's being earned to like, let's say like 1,000 players who are playing the game, and then like on a weekly basis potentially redistributing that to people who are highly retented, I guess I would say. Like, so like if there's 1,000 people in cohort 1, 800 people in cohort 2 playing every day, et cetera, et cetera.
Definitely. I mean, so from the beginning of deploying the treasury, the intent originally during the bull market was to compound the return over time, right? And the end goal being to increase treasury runway as much as possible. I think in the bear market, we flipped towards the balancer and Lido rewards that we've earned to date, right? We've been selling, and we've either used those in the marketing campaigns to market buy corns and land, or we've used them that USDC to purchase UNM during the for our quantitative easing efforts, right? So I really like the idea of taking yield and using it as a way to support the overall economy. I'm not opposed to some of the suggestions you just made, which is like maybe we add Ethereum as a reward to like top tier leaderboards and things. I think there's a lot of opportunity to do things like that. I know that with the FTX blow up and things, which is like literally the antithesis of everything we've done in the space to date, but I get it puts this dark cloud over the idea of yield and risk, and we obviously don't want to put ourselves in a situation where the treasury itself is at risk. But to come back to your first point on the staked ETH play, like I still think that's a really solid opportunity in the space, especially given we've got 18 or so months before in a worst case scenario we would need to even begin to touch the ETH. I'm a pretty big believer that the bull begins to come back in that period of time, and so ultimately I think the community is very conservative. I'd like to think I'm reasonably conservative. It does seem like a really good time to maybe buy a little bit more ETH, but that's something I would probably do via snapshot and not something that I would just push through on my side without really gauging sentiment on that front. Because it represents a unique opportunity, but we get screwed if the bear is longer, right? Than we anticipate. And so right now, me operating under, the bear lasting the entirety of next year and on into 2024, I think is a really conservative take and what we should kind of continue with. And my gauge of community sentiment just generally was this kind of rejection of some of the yield strategies. I disagree with a lot of that because, again, it was the antithesis of FTX, right? We've maintained complete custody over every asset, that's been deployed. We're not sending it to black boxes that are promising crazy, weird yield and things of that nature. But we also have to be very, very conservative, right? Like, to me, the Treasury is almost like a sovereign wealth fund for the crypto unicorns universe, right? And the purpose of a sovereign wealth fund is to never go bankrupt and to grow over time, right? And that is kind of the, I guess, lens through which I view Treasury operations, especially in the kind of bear market. But one last thing, Sam, I would love to hear more feedback from you and other community members on things or strategies that we could potentially execute on that are low risk, that kind of bet on, I like strategies that accumulate more valuable assets into the Treasury with a long bet on the return of, the kind of the next bull market, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate it. That paints a pretty good picture, and I'll keep my eyes peeled and give you feedback as it arises. I just think it'd be super interesting. Like, let's say you've got $50,000 of accrued interest over the last, 2 months or whatever, and then like you say, all right, any new user who joins, we're gonna split this up into 10 tranches, and you got to play every day. And then, there'll be a tranche of, 5,000, 5,000, 5,000, 5,000, and then like actually incentivizing gameplay without diluting token holders in the form of RBW or Unum or anything like that. But yeah, I appreciate all your thoughts and super excited for the next couple months.
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate it, man. Also have an answer on the cornucopias. 146 is the highest held by a single player right now. So yeah, I'm kind of universally a bit surprised that there's not more cornucopias. But I get it with the current points on the fall leaderboard. I think as more is revealed around the specific quests that cornucopias gate access to, you'll certainly see a run up on that front. And I believe, keep in mind, like the plan, this might be an alpha leak, I don't know if this has been shared, but the winter leaderboard obviously will follow the current fall leaderboard, which everyone knows ends at the end of the year, right? So you'll see cornucopias potentially allow you to, via the completion of quests, earn bonus points in the winter update. We're thinking about really compelling ways to like chain events together, so active engagement across events provides some form of a bonus on that front. But yeah, the top player currently has 146 cornucopias. All right, Sparkly. I do have a hard stop in 10, so let's make sure we get through as many as we can.
Okay. All right. Time check. We have 11 minutes, so let's
do a lightning round.
Yeah, so I'm looking through the questions that we have on the thread, and a lot of these have actually been answered by your updates. Okay, so we have a question from Delete ETH. So Delete ETH has a suggestion. He wants to see gear or loot come from questing. He wants these things on-chain and tradable. Like, for example, Time Traveler finding a mythic jousting spear while on an exquisite scroll quest, or L telling us that he got a legendary helmet while doing his quests. So he wants LG to capture these premiums from being exchanged in the secondary market. How do you feel about that idea? Do you think it's something that we're looking to implement with crypto unicorns?
I mean, it's an intriguing idea. I need to see more data against it for sure. But it's interesting.
All right. Okay, we have a question from Shikam. Since Mythic will now have utility, can we also have better / more utility from multiple Mythic versus single Mythic?
I mean, there's already quests, right, that have certain requirements on that front. So you'll be seeing more and more quests that I would say take advantage of that, or require higher tier mythics. We kind of had a funny thing about, like, there's only one person that can complete a quad mythic quest right now, but yeah, for sure. For sure. I think over time, mythics will, I mean, again, they have the highest stats on average, right? Like, you have all of these battle loops. You can imagine they're going to be very important in attack and defense with respect to tribes and tribe features over time. And so I think time and time again, we're going to make players wait for certain things, right? So anyway, I got rubbed slightly the wrong way saying there's finally utility for mythics. Like, all right, well, there's utility with quests. Yes, now you have direct utility within the farm sim, and there was always an enormous amount of utility with respect to mythics and the PvP battle loops. So I would say that, we haven't forgotten about our mythic holders, and we will always continue to incentivize people to grind that loop, because it's an important one with respect to breeding and economic balance, or overall economy balance.
All right. We have a question from Chicken Pork Adobo. Until when can we expect LG to continue buying unicorns and lands for the Great Corn Drop event?
I think we probably have at least another week to complete the starter set of bundles, and then we're going to have to it'll be a factor of how quickly the bundles we have set up are claimed, right? And so I'm also thinking about purchasing some assets as rewards for players, for the most engaged players that hit certain, we'll call them checkpoints throughout their progression. Kind of hit on Jackie Ace's idea, which is like, yeah, I know if you start with 2 unicorns and land, like, the progress is pretty slow, right? Again, we're designing a game that hopefully lasts a decade plus. You have to design systems that are deep, and you have to design things where the trade-off is I go and buy a ton of RBW to progress quickly, or I spend the time and I put my unicorns to work, right? That is the ultimate trade-off. That is how things will work. And over time, I guarantee you will find whales that come in and invest into the economy because they want to hit a certain amount of progression, or they're buying mythics and mythic land that's been progressed from other players, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess that's about all I can say on that off the top of my head.
All right. Okay. So from Crazy Crypto, we have any comments on the existing RBW and unit price? It is currently on the dropping trend. Do we have any mitigation method to keep the price afloat rather than sinking continuously?
Do you want me to readjust the economy to stop being an RBW source? In part, this is an experiment on how many of you are just going to market sell your RBW versus restake it versus, and I think one of the challenges is we've analyzed it. The vast majority of people aren't just selling RBW and exiting the economy. They sell RBW and they go and buy unicorns and land, or they go and, mint new land via the LVM, right? And so the economy overall, which includes all of the assets, to me has a certain center of gravity, or a certain gravity to it, right? Call it a gravity well. And the deeper and stronger that gravity well, the less leakage outside of the system, which is somebody legitimately exiting their assets, going to USDC and ETH, and like moving that to a centralized exchange, moving that into another game, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So right now, the best thing any of us can do is help with growth. The thin nature of our liquidity relative to other token projects, other game projects with tokens floating, right, means that, yes, price goes down. Price will also go up very, very quickly relative to projects with way more liquidity than we have out in the market, right? So the one thing we can all do is grow this thing with me, That is why things like the evangelist program and Discord activation programs are going to be so important. We're going to structure those programs, but it's ultimately on the community to do the work to effectively get these badges out to people that we think are actually going to be good participants within our economy and within our ecosystem. But the challenge, and this is a frustrating point, like I got so much feedback over months and months and months that passive stakers were earning more RBW than gameplay. I agree completely that we want active and engaged players earning the most RBW. So we made the Staking V2 program, which launches in the new year, the first of its kind to reward actively engaged players and community members with not only additional yield, but additional governance power. So that's a huge win I'm very excited about. Coupled with the idea that Quest finally allowed RBW to actually more RBW to leave the game on a daily basis than was being sunk in the game. To that point, there was always more RBW going into the game than out. We do see a good chunk of people restaking that. And again, oftentimes when people sell that RBW, they're buying other assets within the ecosystem. So you need to look holistically at things versus just the prices of individual tokens. And by the way, Unum quantitative easing has kept Unum relatively stable. And again, at the end of the day, do you guys want me to pull back the RBW rewards? Fine, put forward a proposal. We'll tighten the hell out of the economy. But I don't think that's what any of you really want. Yes, we have seen and we have a list of the most extractive players, and at some point, I've kind of wanted to decide like how many of these groups do we really want to prevent this? We can't. We have an open economy. All these assets are real. They're on chain. People have agency. So anyway, that's a little bit of a rant. I'm always open to feedback on that front, but just prices, come on. You can do more for the community by growing it. Every new player that comes in adds value. Likely they're going to need to purchase tokens, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So let's all focus on growth and not prices. And I can promise you that with growth, prices will move in the direction that we all want them to.
All right. Thank you about that. Okay, we have a suggestion from Theist. Please don't put tribes or neighborhoods in Discord. I mean, aren't we not going to? Stop building on Discord. It's centralized. Add all future features in the game app, please. Thanks.
I have no idea what that person is asking me to really do there. If you're frustrated that we're previewing features to certain members of the Discord and not all members, I have no idea what to tell you. The idea that people will make, front run certain decisions and stuff, you guys don't even, it shows the extent to which you trust your own community members, right? If the call is to more broadly circulate those things, quite frankly, my expectation was the people in the Starcorns and Founders channel would leak things out, and that's just kind of an expectation there, right? Transparency is a must. I will not back down on that. The plan is to be more transparent with the community. Trust me, if I think that you guys are making a boneheaded decision, I'm not going to build it, or I'll force it, I'll veto a vote if something to Snapshot goes that I think is inappropriate or isn't going to work, right? While I have that control for the next, 18 or so months, depending on where everything lands, I will exercise it if absolutely necessary. But you're not going to convince me in any way, shape, and form that being more transparent with our community is a bad thing, or getting out ahead and previewing features with the community is a bad thing. And previewing features with the Founders channel and the Starcorns, who have proven to be the most active and engaged community members to date, I don't see as a bad thing either. And I guess that's kind of where I would leave that. Maybe I was off on what that question was really asking, but to me, it's the antithesis of Web3 to start acting like a centralized game company again, right? That's not the point of what we're trying to do here at all.
All right. So I got a reply from Farmer Ponty Donner. He says they mean the Uniguilds. So the Uniguilds, it's within Discord and it will stay within Discord. It's just a supplementary thing to everything else that's going on in the Discord. His meaning is having the games actually be on the game instead of Discord. This is, I'm also kind of confused on this because we've always had community events.
Points are an engagement activity for the community. They're not a part of the game, right?
Yeah.
The game is the game. jousting is the game, right? So yeah, that's a little confusing, but have them DM me or pass the question along once it's been clarified.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
definitely. And I'd love to, like, if you guys wanted to get a discussion going on how we can make community events better for y'all or like have some sort of community engagement, please reach out to us. We're always willing to listen to suggestions. We love feedback. Okay, so that is our last question for today. Thank you so much for showing up to the town hall. Any questions in the Town Hall 26 thread will be answered by me later on, so no worries. That concludes our weekly Town Hall number 26. We will see you next week for weekly Town Hall number 27. Incidentally, that is also the last Town Hall for this year, so please come. Let's have fun. The usual time after Shadow of Corn's Throwing Shade stream, 8 a.m. PST. See you there. We'll post a recording of this town hall on our socials if you would like to give it a real listen. Don't forget to share this with your friends and a fellow unicorn fan who couldn't make it. If you have more burning questions, feel free to reach out on our support channels, the Mod Support channel and the Ask the Dubs channel. This has been Sparkly Unicorn. Good morning, good night, and see you in-game on Discord and in the forums, Unicorn fam. Ooh.
Ooh. Bye, Sparkly.
Bye! Is it alpha time? You guys want alpha? Thank you so much for coming, everybody. So next week we're going to have the very last weekly town hall. If you guys have any suggestions or anything that you want to do to make it nice and special, please don't hesitate to tag me. Let's have a little talk. I hope y'all have a great day. Bye!